Hey guys, in this video, we're going to be talking about Wrath the Lich King Pre-Rebus for Protection Warrior. We are going to be focusing on, of course, all the things that you can do to get yourself as tanky as possible, as ready to go, heading into your first. Next ram is 25, next ram is 10, Obsidian Sanctum, Eye of Eternity, the whole gambit. So before we get into that, two things. Number one, I'd appreciate it if you followed my Twitch in the description below and subscribe to YouTube. And then, of course, throughout this video, I'm not going to go too in depth into the stats we're looking for. I already made another video about that, so that'll be in the description below. We're going to be focusing mainly on the gear, but the summary of how we're going to do things in this video is, we're talking about pre-raid-bis. We're talking about what to do to get ready for raid. All that we care about is survivability. So what I've done is I've taken an old Elitist stat weight, and I have used it just so that as we're looking through the items here, you can see relative values. And I have modified all of the threat components rather than, I've nerfed them, I guess, a little bit in terms of how much value you gain from threat. And I've also doubled the value of stamina, and I increased the value of armor by 50%. I also increased the value of resilience in defense. Basically, it's really hard to get defense capped as a warrior, so we want to make sure we're looking for items high in defense. And then besides that, guaranteed sources of survivability, armor, and stamina are really important for our first clear, so we don't get one shot. So that is it. So throughout this video, you're going to see these stat weights. That's what it is. It's not the only thing that is going to be determining any decision, of course, and I'll be talking about multiple items and sometimes going with an item that doesn't have the highest, score. But just to give you an idea of kind of what we're looking at, right out the gate, you're going to be like, what Obsidian Great Helm is a better overall helmet than Tempered Titan Steel? Of course, but not for our first clear, right? We're not going to be looking for high expertise, high crit items. We're going to be looking for high stamina, high survivability. All right, with that, let's get right into it. So for the helmet, we have our Tempered Titan Steel helmet. This is just a crazy high amount of stamina. Even if you look at the other items from Raid, it is, far and away the highest stamina. The second closest is the Obsidian Great Helm, which you're going to notice is actually a DPS item. So even if you were to go for this, you would lose, a lot of defense avoidance. So of the, tank item options available, this is a very high health item. Amazing for a first clear. The downside is it's going to be very expensive from blacksmithing. Now, an alternative is the armored titanium goggles. This is going to be cheaper. I am less of a fan of these because there's a very, very high amount of expertise on these, a lot of the stat budget. If we compare it to the Tempered Titan Steel helmet, it's way less stamina, for more strength, more expertise mainly. You're going to see there is higher defense on these goggles, but if you consider that we're going to be putting a blue gem into the Tempered Titan Steel helmet, the Tempered Titan Steel helmet is going to give us 54 defense. These goggles are going to give us, 60. That's 6 more. So the socket bonus is not as good in this one either for our first clear. So yeah, simply put, the Tempered Titan Steel helm is going to be definitely better, even though it is more expensive than the titanium goggles. Now, of course, you definitely don't need to break the bank on either of these helmets before your first, set of raids. So what a lot of you guys are going to be going with is either the ground tremor helm or the arcane shielded helm. The tremor helm is better because it has higher defense. We want that defense. The arcane shielded helm is nice too. It does have a socket bonus with defense rating, so it's certainly perfectly fine. But the ground tremor helm has a nice stamina socket bonus, and you need 1 red gem anyway for your meta gem. So both are very good. Tremor helm wins out because of the defense, but both very good options, and you'd be happy with either going into your first set of raids. Now, just to give you an idea of kind of how the Sunwell items compare, something like Faceplate Impenetrable from Black Temple or the 2 Sunwell helmets are not too far off when it comes to, survivability from the new helmets coming in Wrath. They are a little bit, obviously the new stuff is a little bit better, but certainly serviceable. If you have one of the Sunwell items, you could potentially focus on a different slot first, but you still would get a decent upgrade here, a nice sizable upgrade by switching out your helmet. The main thing you're going to see in these older helmets is they're going to be lower on defense, despite still having a good amount of stamina. All right. Next, we're going to go to the next slot. Once again, we have another example of a BOE item that is really good, but expensive, right? There's going to be a few of these titanium earthbind type pieces. Well, they're not all called titanium earthguard, but titanium tempered titan steel, titanium earthguard ring, the blacksmithing set of items. There's even a shield called Titan Steel Shield Wall. So the snack is great. Again, armor, stamina, defense, exactly what we want. However, it's expensive. You certainly can get by with something like the badge neck. But again, if all we care about is survivability in our first raid, the titanium earthguard chain is going to be really good. What I want to maybe potentially bring up why you would be less interested in this item is after your first clear, you're potentially going to be switching this out pretty fast. If you're not, all in on stamina, all in on armor, just really trying to not get one shot, you're going to find that a lot of these other items are going to have more value. There's a lot of items you could choose to, go with instead. You're going to find that the heroism neck is going to be just, overall, better when you start looking at adding threat in to the equation. You're going to see that some of these other necks, there's several from Nax and Eye of Eternity that you can get. You're going to get one of these eventually. So if you do drop a decent amount of money on this, there's a pretty reasonable chance you could have gotten something similar or slightly better pretty quickly. So that's the only thing I will mention. Very good in terms of survivability. You still could turn to it until you get some of the best necks in the game when it comes to pure, survivability with high stamina, but not going to last you very long. Now, if you don't go with that, definitely go with one of these two necks. Go with the Burning Skull Pendant or the Chained Military, Heroism neck. Obviously, this one's got a little bit of hit, but still very tanky. Still a better mitigation option than Burning Skull, despite the hit. Other options, of course, there's a few different things here. Pendant of Nazarethum and Shadowseeker's Pendant are worse, but options you could still use. Onto the shoulders. Another very expensive BOE. This item is another item that could last you a decent bit. There's only a couple of shoulders that are going to be significantly better. But honestly, this one's probably going to be very, very expensive as well. Definitely are perfectly fine going with the Pauldrons of the Colossus or a Sunwell equivalent. This is one where I'll say Pauldrons of the Colossus is pretty much equal to the Sunwell shoulders. So you're more than fine using any of these. If you can't get Pauldrons of the Colossus, you can also go for Iron Dwarf shoulders. I don't like these quite as much because they're lower in stamina. I like to have the high stamina, but any of these shoulders will do just fine. Next, Cloak. Once again, another BOE. This one is absolutely not necessary. It's probably going to be expensive. I would heavily recommend going for Cloak of the Enemy or Cloak of Peaceful Resolutions if you can't get this cheap. This is a little bit better, so I have it selected again, a little bit tankier for your first clear. But these items are perfectly fine. Even Cloak of Flowing Command, perfectly fine. It's level 78, but the bonus armor is going to make it, I would always go with one of these cloaks as they have higher stamina. But bonus armor is nice. Bonus armor is something that is going to allow you to be really tanky. But one thing I wouldn't recommend, the durable Narub Hide Cape is better for some of the other tanks. Not necessarily good for you. So you're going to be overpaying for this a lot because you don't really want a cloak without defense on it as a warrior early. And other tanks do want this item. So it's going to be expensive and not even as good. So definitely don't go for that. On to the chest. In case you didn't know, you might see this as a raid item and go, what's going on? I thought this is pre-raid. You can buy this with 80 badges of heroism from the Dalaran vendor. So you can actually get this with 80 badges of heroism. And I'll talk about at the end how you should spend your heroism. But yeah, this item's really good if you can get it. Very high in stamina. If you compare it to the other two alternatives that are really good, you're going to want to try and get Breastplate of the Solemn Council or Sun and Blazing Chest. Both of these are quite good. And it's a pretty big gap between anything Sunwell related. So I would definitely recommend one of these two chests if you don't get Hero's Dread, not Breastplate. The nice thing is if you're able to get the chest and the gloves, you get a 10% shield slam bonus, which again, we're talking about how we're not as interested in threat. But when you're already taking two items that are very tanky, there's no downside and you get free 10% shield slam damage. which is, just bonus. So this chest is great, but you might not have the badges for it in time for your first raid. If that's the case, Sun and Blazing Chest Guard, Breastplate of Solemn Council, they're pretty much equal in value. Solemn Council has more defense. Emblazoned Chest has more health. Go with Emblazoned Chestplate if you can get crit immune without Solemn Council. Go with Solemn Council if you need the help with the crit immunity, you need the defense. Next, we have wrists. Bracers of the Herald are really good. Quite a bit better than the bindings of Dark Will, but these certainly will still be serviceable. Besides that, it's another pretty big drop off before we're looking at anything else. The Sunwell wrists certainly are not bad. The tier wrists, and then you could go for one of these other Utgard Pinnacle. These aren't even level 70 items. This item doesn't have any defense on it, so it can make our gear set a little weird, but if you can make it work, it's not the worst. But yeah, definitely try your best to get Bracers of the Herald, and if not, Bindings of the Dark Will. Not as many options in the wrist slot. On to weapon. Red Sword of Courage is great. Great item, really powerful. Fast speed, defense, hit, high stamina. Pretty much exactly what you want. The other items you can get, you can see it's up here with a bunch of, in terms of like the stats, it's up there with a bunch of raid items. The Cloud Striker, War Axe, and the Infantry Assault Blade are both very good as well. Infantry Assault Blade is a little bit slow, which would be better in dungeons. And Cloud Strider War Axe is fast, which would be better in raid. So you default for going for the axe unless, you're a human, in which case things get a little more complicated because you get expertise from your racial. But then this item is going to be a little on the slow end. Definitely both good, though. Go with whichever you can get. And obviously try and get the Red Sword of Courage. After that, we have Shield. Shield, there's a few different options. So Titan Steel Shield Wall is an item, again, another one you can purchase. Great for getting crit immunity. Very high in defense. You don't necessarily need it, though. So I don't think you should be breaking your bank for the Titan Steel Shield Wall. You should be able to get away with not having to buy this in terms of defense. And you can get a badge shield or the shield from Culling of Stratholme. I definitely would recommend buying the emblem of Heroism Shield if you are not having good luck getting Royal Crest of Lordaeron. A very efficient use of badges. It's a big upgrade from anything else you can get. Big upgrade from the Nexus Shield, which is your next best bet. And then there's a big drop off after that. So when it comes to shields, it's basically if you're really unlucky and you just don't have any emblems of heroism, Bulwark is okay. You really want to get one of these three shields, either the Heroism Shield, the Crest of Lordaeron, or the Titan Steel Shield Wall. But I would try and save your gold on this one. The Titan Steel Shield Wall is definitely not going to compete with any of the raid shields. And, only Skull of Ruin. But, yeah, definitely go with one of those. All right, next we go with gloves. Our gloves, we have, once again, the opportunity to buy a tier piece with heroism. It costs 60 heroism for the gloves. And I want to stress that this is a deluxe purchase. The chest is a big upgrade and is actually a good use of 80 emblems of heroism. The gloves is a deluxe purchase. Fire-proven gauntlets are great. Horn-tipped gauntlets are great. These horn-tipped gauntlets are actually have a really high amount of expertise. So as you're kind of scaling into, increasing your threat on farm, these are actually really solid. But yeah, go with one of these two, fire-proven gauntlets or horn-tipped gauntlets. If you have the extra heroism, if you're just spamming out, a bunch of heroics like crazy, feel free to go with the Heroes Dreadnought. Like I said, if you have that 2 set, it's really nice. These are very high in stamina, great for your first clear, and a good option all around. Next, we have Belt. So this is a Heroism Belt. You don't need to get this one. The Scotty's Iron Belt is very good and very close in overall value. So if you have Scotty's Iron Belt, do not spend heroism on Wasteguard of Living Iron. Just sit with that. Spend your heroism on the other items we talked about. But yeah, pretty much you're going to want to go with Scotty's Iron Belt, Ancient Aligned Girdle. These are both pretty close to Living Iron. Do not drop too many heroisms if you've got one of these. That's my recommendation. Sound like I'm screaming at you here. But After that, it's a pretty big drop off. The rest of these belts are not as good. So it's really like a 3-man race here when it comes to the belt. Next, we have legs. When it comes to legs, we have the bolstered leg plates. These are really great, really high in defense, high in hit rating, high in stamina. It's really good. Pretty much exactly what you'd want. The lay guardian leg guards are basically the same thing but worse. So, fine until you get bolstered, but you'd rather just have bolstered. These do have a really high defense though, which bolstered do as well, but this can help your gearing early. Really try and get one of those two. After that, you're not going to have a whole lot of good stuff. You could use Sunwell legs. You could use, maybe the Argent Crusade legs, but I would really try your best to get one of these two because it's a pretty big drop off. The bolstered legs are really good. Next, we have got boots. So technically speaking, again, Temper Titan Steel are going to be your best bet if you want full mitigation. And you can see here, there's a lot of BOEs, which is a good thing. It's you might be here poor thinking this is awful. It's a good thing that you have a lot of BOEs. You don't have to get any of these, but if you're getting unlucky with an item, you have the option to buy something that could round out your gear set. You have the option to get something that could make sure you're tanky enough for your first clear. Again, the Temper Titan Steel boots, they're not something that I would spend gold on necessarily. There's a bunch of different boots that you can get from Valor, from Nax 10, obviously a few different ones from Nax 25. I would not really stress about the gold on these, especially when Sabatons of Draconic Vigor and these Greaves of Ancient Evil, like these are pretty good options. The Sabatons of Draconic Vigor are sometimes even better because of the really high defense. It can help you get crit immunity. So even though this is a nice upgrade and it is definitely pre-raid Abyss, it's not tied with Draconic Vigor. It is a little bit better, but it's one of the items that is not going to be cost efficient for you, and definitely not necessary. Next, we have the Titanium Earthguard ring. Now, this ring is going to be really high in stamina. Of course, if you put 24 stamina in it, it goes up to 87 stamina. If you look at the other rings, that's about as much as the really good rings. So this is a nice item early. Definitely not something you're going to be necessarily using long term, especially considering we just looked at items that have similar stamina amounts and offer a lot more attractive stats. But it is technically going to be pre-raid Abyss in terms of the stamina. You do have some armor rings that are nice. These armor rings are going to be another way to guaranteed make you more tanky. These both have defense on them. Another ring that's really good is the Keystone Great Ring. If you can afford this in your gear set, this is going to be really nice. Now, this is going to be a ring that not every set can use because you give up a lot of other stats for it. There's no defense on this, so it can make it awkward to use. But I would recommend, so the set we have here is exactly crit immune and, a recommended setup. But you're not going to have exactly what I have here in every single set. I would definitely recommend Keystone Great Ring. You could argue that this is the best ring pre-raid. I would say that something like Titanium Earthguard is going to be, again, higher stamina and it has defense, so it doesn't put you in a weird gearing situation. You also have that nice socket bonus for defense rating, which is really nice. But yeah, any of these rings are going to be good. The Keystone Great Ring, the Band of Torture, Nerubian Shield Ring, Titanium Earthguard Ring, the Sunwell Ring, the Ring of Hardened Resolve. These are all going to be great. And, I would go with any of them for pre-raid rings. You could also even go for, some of these rings aren't that bad. Really the last one I would say is the Unsmashable Heavy Band. After that, it's a pretty big drop off. But those are the rings I would recommend. All right, trinket time. Of course, you're going to want a stamina trinket if you can. Get your hands on them. Definitely try and get Essence of Gossamer. If you're jewel crafting, you want to go with the Figurine Monarch Crab. If you're not jewel crafting, you can still try and go for a Sonic Booster. It's going to be a lot less stamina, though. You can go for the Ruby Hair. I wouldn't. A lot of us are going to be engineering for Rocket Boots. But obviously, yeah, you can you want to go with the monarch crab instead of the ruby hare. You know. Besides that, I mean, that's mainly the trinkets you're going to be going for. You could definitely go for something like Seal of the Pantheon to help you get crit immune. You could leverage that defense into a lot of stamina in other places. Technically, you could do that with Darkmoon card Berserker too, which may end up being really cheap if everybody's going for the other Darkmoon cards. You could use the Resilience to gain a lot of stamina in other slots, but usually these kind of items are going to be very specialized and would only be good if you make sure in every other slot that you are using, full stamina gems, no defense, enchants, you're getting the most out of the crit immunity and not wasting it. Typically, they're not going to be recommended though, and you're probably just going to end up using like an old stamina trinket from Classic if you can't get anything else, like something like Commendation. Commendation is still certainly reasonable, even at 80 for your first clear. All right, ranged weapon. This is the one I would buy. Of all of the BOEs we've talked about, this is the one you actually want to get. This one is best in slot all of phase 1. It is competitive with even the Ulduar weapon. So even if that doesn't drop for a while, it's kind of neck and neck. Ulduar one's a little bit better. But this item is really good. I mean, if you compare it to the other items, you're going to see that it's a big boost in stamina, and it helps you get crit immune with the defense. This gun is very, very good and very bis. Not even talking about pre-raid. It is bis by a long shot for your normal gear. This is the item I would make sure to get if I'm talking pre-raid, what to focus on. Helmet is expensive. You're eventually going to replace it. Neck, ring, boots, you're probably going to replace pretty quick. Shoulders are going to be very expensive. Can find equivalent or replace pretty fast. The gun is the one you drop the big stacks on. So so we've kind of gone through each slot. I'll go through kind of a reasonable setup here just to show you our summary of stats. We're looking at like 32,000 health unbuffed, which is really good. This is more health than some sets are going to have in this gear because they go for a lot more threat. So this is like really tanky. You don't need this. You do not need to be this tanky to live through your first clear of Naxxramas. I would heavily encourage you guys to just go with what you got. When it's time to raid, don't freak out about it too much. You'll probably be fine. But these are just every single slot, like the tankiest items, so that even if you get half of this, you're still tanky enough for Nax 25. Even if you get a quarter of this, but you get the good alternatives, you're still going to be tanky enough. But this is just as beefy as you can get, trying to get high armor, high health, crit immune. Now, this is like kind of a reasonable setup. You're going to see all of the BOEs are gone. Instead of going for the Waistguard of Living Iron, we've gone with the Scotty belt, which is close and we don't have to spend heroism. Instead of going with the gloves from Raid, we're going with the horn tip, or not Raid, but the Raid gloves that you can buy with badges. We've gone with the horn tip gauntlets. Instead of the Raid chest that we can get with 80 heroism, we've gone with, I should just call it tier 7. It's kind of complicated though, because there's a low item level and a high item level. But instead of the tier 7 10-man items, we've gone with these alternatives. And yeah, tried to keep a lot of the items that were still, from heroics that we wanted a lot though. And we end up replacing our ranged weapon. We lose a lot. So you can see Stolen Vrykul Harpoon or Gyro Balance, Corium Destroyer, or Drakari Hunting Bow. These are all fine alternatives for the gun. The gun's just really good. Yeah, this is the set we've come up with when it comes to pre-raid bis. When it comes to spending heroism, my general guideline would be the following. My first priority would be just check on your shield. If you don't have Royal Crest of Lordaeron yet, I would buy the discarded plate panel. For only 35 emblems of heroism, you're getting a shield upgrade. Shield is one of your most important slots. That'll be my first priority. Get the shield. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be high value. After that, we're looking at our chest. The chest for 80 emblems, we can get a big chest upgrade, a huge stamina increase. We end up getting that Hero's Dreadnought breastplate, which is going to be really nice. If we get any other tier from raids, we're getting closer to our set bonuses already, which is really nice. So definitely go for that next. After that, neck, belt, gloves, I would consider them all to be, not needed. Not needed, but definitely reasonable. I would say neck is definitely the best because it's going to be a good amount of, it's going to give us a little bit of threat as we're going towards farm. But I would say look to the neck next. And then the last things I would look for is belt and gloves. I think the gloves are a slight upgrade. Although they can help, get you your set bonuses, that would definitely boost their value. And of course, the belt is just really, really low value. But there's not a ton of heroism items, so that's what I'd go for there. Now, I'll do a very quick, zoom through enchants. A lot of them are pretty self-explanatory, but you might not know of all of them. For the head enchant, we definitely go with the stamina and defense helm enchant. There are other tanks that can use the mind amplification disc from engineering that gives you more stamina. But as a warrior, you're going to have a hard time using that enchant early because we really need defense badly. When it comes to the shoulder enchant, we definitely want the stamina and resilience. Again, we really need that crit immunity. So we definitely want this shoulder enchant, definitely the best one. When it comes to cloak, mighty armor is going to be something that we switch around with Titanweed. I would definitely go with one of these two instead of the agility parachute. The parachute is definitely something I'm going to be looking to use on farm for fun, and it's definitely a cool item. But going into first raids, I'm worried more about consistent mitigation with the armor, not RNG dodge. I don't want to get one shot. I'm not looking to avoid a bunch of attacks and take less damage over a long fight. And then, of course, the Titan Weave is, we sometimes need this for crit immunity. For chest, you want to go with health. You can go with defense on chest. You typically would like to preserve the health on the chest as your top priority. You're willing to sacrifice the block value on your shield for defense. That's your first draw. If you need more defense, the first thing you do is you gem defense because you can get socket bonuses. You can use yellow and blue hybrid gems to get socket bonuses. That's your first line of defense. If you need more defense after that, you look to potentially swap out an item that doesn't have defense. That's definitely an option. After that, you're going to, although this item is so good, you can get away with switching some things. After that, you switch your shield to defense enchant. If you still need more defense, you switch your cloak to defense enchant. And if you, even after that, still need more defense, you switch your chest. But do it in that order. Typically, though, you're going to be better off gemming defense than giving up some of those stats. Depends on your situation, though. You would like to use hybrid gems where you can, and on occasion, one or two, yellow pure defense gems can be okay early. For weapon, we're still going to be using Mongoose till the better enchants come out. Talked about all those other enchants. For our wrists, we just want stamina. Of course, if you happen to be a leather worker, you can definitely go with the stamina enchant. If you're an inscription person, you could go with the dodge and defense shoulder enchant. I don't think inscription is very good for protection tanking because that enchant actually can cause crit immunity issues early. And inscription of the gladiator is going to be better sometimes. So it's kind of awkward that your big profession bonus is not even potentially going to be the best for you. For gloves, the armor from engineering is really, really, really good. Insanely good, especially early. Definitely recommend that. If you're not engineering, you can, of course, go for Armsman, which gives threat and then some parry rating. That would be my go-to enchant for farm. But for progression, you could go with glove reinforcements for more armor still, or you could go with agility. I would again try and think defensively your first clear, rather than offensively, or even worry about threat at all. Leg enchant, pretty straightforward. Stamina enchant, frostside leg armor. This is what you want to go for. When it comes to the boots, you want the rocket boots if you can get them. I really want to stress that there's a lot of playmaking you can do with rocket boots, and you're going to see some engineering tanks take, I could see an argument for the movement speed behind the Tuskar's Vitality. But I think the 15 stamina can definitely be outweighed by just popping nitro boosts and literally running away from the boss. You can run away from the boss with these boots and just kite and potentially be the difference between killing the boss and not. There's some bosses you don't want to move, dragons and stuff. You don't want to move because of tails and all that stuff. But hey, there's nothing stopping you on Grand Widow, Faralina. If she's enraging, hey, take a run, zoom around. Why not? Of course, if you are enchanting, you can go for the stamina enchants. They're great. And if you're jewel crafting, try and start doing your dailies as soon as possible so you can get your JC gems. Those are great as well. For gemming, you want to gem stamina and everything, pretty much ignoring socket bonuses except for yellow gems. For yellow gems, you typically want to gem defense and stamina to get the set bonus and then get towards your crit immunity. In red gems, you pretty much don't want to gem any of them by and large. Again, early on, we just want as much stamina as possible, but you do need one for your meta. You can go with an agility gem or a nightmare tier. It's just going to depend on how much this thing ends up costing early. This might be really expensive, might not be worth getting, but nightmare tier is going to be better than the shifting twilight opal, especially as you move towards farm, because the strength is going to have more value as you're caring less about just living. But again, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's any items you thought I missed or anything like that. But I tried to cover all of the different options. But yeah, that's it for pre-raid this for your protection warrior. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you guys next time for the best in slot gear for tier 7.